Hello, welcome to Fuzia TV, a show dedicated to showcasing and empowering women worldwide. I'm Riya Sinha, your host, and today we have the pleasure of welcoming an inspirational woman, Shreyasi Singh. She is the founder of Harappa Education, an online learning institution that aims to build people's competencies and confidence in their chosen line of work. Shreyasi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Riya. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I guess I'd just like to start off by asking you to tell me a bit about yourself. Like, what is the work that you do now and what led you to that?
Oh my gosh, that's a really long story, but I'm going to try and cut it short. So, essentially, I've had somewhat of an unlikely journey to where I am right now, which is being the founder and CEO of an online learning institution. That's not really the way that I began. I think for most of my life, I've actually been a journalist. I used to work in television. I used to be the editor of a magazine called Inc. in India, which was sort of, profiles entrepreneurs. It was the Indian edition of the American magazine Inc. I've written a book. I used to write a column. So really most of my career has been spent as a journalist, covering business and entrepreneurship. And then over the last 3 or 4 years, I've made the switch to higher education as a career. And, I was one of those people who would say I would never want to be an entrepreneur. And, here I am. And I often say that, I'm an unlikely entrepreneur, especially for the kind of business that I'm running, that I'm a non-techie, non-MBA founder of a digital business. So, in that sense, I've had a messy, zigzaggy journey.
Yeah, I feel that I did a lot of journalism in my high school as well. I wrote for my magazine, and now that I'm like starting to do like business stuff, I realize like I'm also very non-techie, but I think it's interesting to blend the skills because I think journalism gives you a lot of good, great skills for the world as well. Like,
It's so interesting you're saying that, because just as I was waiting for this conversation to begin, I had a couple of minutes. So I just Instagram a picture because, I have this mic that I've been using now for interviews. And this is sort of my third media related task that I'm doing today. So I was
yeah,
invited to be a guest on a podcast. So I did that recording today. Then we have our own podcast at Harappa, and I interviewed somebody for that today. And this is sort of the third thing, and I was like, wow, this the CEO's life is really a journalist's life from the other side. But you're so right to say that the skills that you pick up, I think people are sort of almost surprised at how I'm doing this. How is this
yeah,
woman running a business with sort of not having the so-called required skills or a trajectory to have got here. But if you think about it, journalism, you typically, if you've been in journalism, you have a love for reading and just an
yeah,
engagement with the world, and just a curiosity for the world, which I think is such a powerful attribute. Then you're used to imbibing lots of information very quickly. You're used to synthesizing, and you are used to asking a lot of questions, right?
hmm
um, as well as, of course, the power of writing well and
yeah,
speaking effectively. All senior jobs are essentially sales jobs, right?
yeah,
You're trying to attract talent, you're trying to attract funding, you're trying to attract business. So I actually now wonder, I used to have this imposter syndrome when I started Harappa, that how could I build that? And I almost now wonder, wow, how do founders and CEOs who don't have communication
yeah.
skills manage? So which has been a really sort of this 360 journey for me, feeling like an imposter, to now wondering how can somebody who doesn't have these skills make it in business.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think communication skills, especially when a lot of tech is becoming like automized now because of robots and AI and everything, us having communication skills and working on those is actually really, really important. So,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And I think if you're a good communicator, you typically understand people well, right?
yeah,
Because you begin with the audience, and
yeah,
that, of
exactly.
course, gives you great power in being able to persuade them, convince them, work with them. So, we digressed a little bit from my journey to this fascinating conversation, but
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. So, I guess my next question is, how does your culture or your background or your values inform the way that you've made like your decisions in life and all of that?
Well, interestingly, I think I have both diverged from my culture and upbringing and background to be doing, what I've been doing and to being who I am, as well as so much of it is also comes from that culture and background, right? So I think why I would say is why I have diverged from it is I'm from the state in India called Bihar, and Bihar is obviously sort of not known for its entrepreneurship abilities, and really because it's a poor state, people hanker for state government jobs because those are obviously the most stable, and so enterprise, I don't think growing up I had ever heard the word entrepreneurship, right? So in that sense, what I've been doing, most of my cousins, uncles, aunts have all been either in government service or have been engineers or have been MBAs, and business was almost sort of, nobody had been a journalist or an artist, and very few people, at least now people from my generation have become entrepreneurs. My brother is an entrepreneur now. My husband is an entrepreneur. Another cousin is an entrepreneur. But all of this is much more recent. But otherwise, nobody had been. So I think there's a big divergence away from that in that sense. I think where I now feel that there's great alignment, I think is really with my dad. I think he's also this very restless, go-getting person. And I think he feels a lot about the world that he lives in, and he's very sensitive to the injustices around the world, and that he wants to do something. Like, he has the urge within him to go and do something and to be relevant to the world and have impact in the world beyond your own success. And actually, I think I resonate with that emotion very much, right? He's also, he was a banker all his life, so I don't think his creative pursuits sort of were unleashed because he had to take care of a family and all of that. But he writes actually really well, which I've only discovered in the last 7-8 years. I think he's only discovered it in the last 7-8 years. And he's written a book. He writes beautiful poetry. I actually think I've got that also from him. So as I'm growing older and as I'm seeing him experience and express different sides of his personality after his retirement that he did not get to earlier, I feel like I'm a lot like him more than anybody else in my family and upbringing, and do want to do things which are meaningful outside of me.
No, I think that's really good that you can get inspiration, from those around you that you've grown up with also.
Yes.
And then my next question is, what are 3 topics that you are most passionate about?
Well, right now, I think I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship. I think it's as a way of being. And I think there's sort of so many subtopics within that: optimism, risk-taking, resourcefulness. I think a lot of that really excites me. I think obviously because I'm building a business in education and online education. So I'm right now very passionate about learning as much about it as whatever. And I'm actually very passionate also about professional women and sort of the external and internal barriers they experience to truly sort of, live their full self. In fact, interestingly, my segue into higher education was to work in a women's only management program. And at that time, 4 years back, I was more interested in the fact that it was a women's only management program. More than that, it was higher education. Of course, it kindled sort of the love for higher education and so on and so forth. But I think I do feel like that is that is a sense of responsibility I have, and I want to continue to do whatever I can to shift, move to, make the movement go ahead.
No, I think that's definitely important.
And the last is I have a teenage son, and so I don't know if I'm passionate about him, but all my stress and my worries are around what the hell he's going to do in high school, and where is he going to go to college, and when is he going to get his act together. So those are the 4 things.
I have a little brother, so I worry about him sometimes too. He's only like 12 or 13 right now.
Yes, the same age as my son.
But it's fine. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, so my next question is, who are your mentors? And, how has mentorship affected your life, if it has?
It's so interesting because we've just recorded, we have a podcast that I host at
Mhm.
Harappa called Habits Matter. And our fourth episode is going to go live tomorrow, and it's actually titled Do Mentors Matter?
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so do mentors matter? And so this topic is something that I've been thinking about a lot. I think three or four, there are, I don't know, I want to expand the conversation to say not just mentors, but role models.
Mhm.
I think there are, because I think people, of course, a mentorship is a much more intimate relationship when you know the person and and they really help propel your growth, right? But just by being supportive. And I've been lucky to recently, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, my co-founder at Harappa is certainly somebody, Pramat, certainly somebody who has been a mentor, and has believed in me and has sort of told me to be fearless in my ambitions. But I think there are 3 4 other people who really inspire and move me, are people I don't know but I observe in the world. Is of course the Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Yeah.
I find her luminous, right? Like, I feel like she makes really important points, but there's a lightness of touch in her
Yeah.
language. And there's a little bit of humor, which is really the style that, I most like about people,
Mhm.
that you don't take yourself too seriously. She'll make a joke about wearing lipstick or buying clothes. And she's also this fashionista. And I feel like that's a really powerful blend, right? Of
Yeah.
being
It's
who
like,
you are. I think she really inspires me. Then Jacqueline Novogratz, who founded the Acumen Fund. I think, she has really inspired me. And there are these women scientists at ISRO in
mhm.
India, which is the space and research organization. And there was a successful mission to Mars that India had been working on, there was this lot of footage around them, and there were these seemingly not very scientific looking women, because they were wearing gorgeous silk saris, and had flowers in their hair, and gaudy gold jewelry, but they were really working on this mission, which I think I like people who surprise you and sort of break the mold and the stereotype. So I
Yeah.
think personalities like that have made me believe that I and others, anyone can do anything, and I think
Yeah.
that's a really important mentor mantra to sort of have in mind.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then I think kind of going off that point that you just made, my next question was like, what is your biggest like vision for life? Or like, like what's your ultimate, like what do you want people to remember you by?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can. I'm not thinking in legacy yet. I feel like I'm too in the thick of things to start
Yeah,
thinking
that
about
makes
my
sense.
legacy. Yeah, that sounds kind of grand at this moment. I think I'll get there. I think I have an idea, but in the last, actually a couple of years back, I did this exercise. I was coming off sort of this not so great professional experience, and and I was contending with the fact that I had to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to own what I was building.
Mhm.
And and sort of these were all these existential threads in my mind that were happening. And then I actually, I've been exposed to a lot of leadership literature and management literature, and they all keep saying, oh, I have a personal vision for yourself. And when
Yeah.
you're younger, you sort of poo-poo on some of this because it sounds sort of touchy feely, but I actually did that. And I think I remember writing even now to say that I want the recognition to have built something of impact and scale, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's now a very simple sentence, but I think it captures.
No,
I
yeah, I
had
think yeah.
Yeah, I had to be really honest with myself, because especially that recognition point, I was like, hey, I don't want to be a hidden hero, right?
Mhm.
Or somebody like doing amazing work but somewhere that people don't know. I said, listen, I have to own up even to my vanity, right? As much as I own up to the fact that I want to, my success must have impact. And the scale thing was also that I should do something big with my life, right? Like, it should do that. So I think that is certainly sort of this thread that I think now I'm very fixated in on. And that would actually mean building a fintech company, right? I mean, education and online is one way of getting recognition, scale, and impact, but it could also come from fintech. So I think that the recognition, scale, and impact are sort of now 3 important pegs by which I do want to analyze and evaluate whatever I commit myself to.
Mhm.
And second, I think I love this convergence between education, technology,
Yeah,
brand, right? I think there's a lot to do here. So hopefully I'll have more education related
yeah.
company.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's definitely like the future is figuring out how online plays into education and all of that.
Yes.
Um, and so my next question is kind of on a different note, but how do you deal with any discrimination that you've faced or have you faced any?
Yeah, I think we all do it. We all do even now, right? I mean, not that, being the CEO of, protects you from that. There will be
Yeah.
moments that you feel that, hey, am I held to a higher bar, even by my team or by others? Because I'm a woman who has to always ensure that you're more competent as well as you're likable. I think there's all of that are people taking me seriously. So I don't think, as well as obviously taking on more social responsibilities for your family as well as taking care of the house, and if you start giving it up and always want equality on an everyday basis on every task, the discrimination will start to feel very evident. So but I don't like, and I don't want to dismiss it. I think it exists. I
Hmm.
think anyone who say, men or women, to say things have changed and discrimination does not exist are fooling themselves. So I know it's a big problem, but I want to feel like I'm a strong person, and I don't see myself as a victim. I that's just not my mindset. I think there have been points in my life where I might have felt like that, but I stay away from that. And so now I have a formula for it, to say that, listen, you can't be in activist mode every day. It's too tiring. Some idiot comes and behaves and says something stupid. Not every day do you want to pick a fight. Some people are not worth you trying to persuade, and some people you persuade through humor, some people you persuade through pleading, some people you persuade through confrontation. And it's okay. You have to pick your battles. You can't fight this fight actively every day, right? So I try not to get too bogged down by it, but of course it exists for you, it exists for me.
Yeah.
And I just feel, which is why a conversation like this at 10:30, I would want to do this, is only because I think it's just important to say that, listen, you can get beyond it, and it is really tough. And a lot of this is also in your own head and in your minds, and that's actually even a tougher battle.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of constantly convince yourself to
Yeah.
do more and be more, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely you have to strike some kind of balance. And then my next question would be, like, what are concrete ways that you think you've learned to like take care of yourself and like, I guess, love yourself in a way? I think for women, it's always a struggle to accept themselves, but I think it's important to realize like what are ways that you can, take care of your health, your well-being, all of that.
Yeah, so I actually think that physical health and stamina is such an under discussed aspect for professional success as well
Mm-hmm.
as personal success. Like, the kind of life that I'm leading right now is very tough. It's physically tough, it's mentally draining. I can't imagine being able to do this if I didn't have physical vigor,
Yeah.
right? And health and stamina. So I think I've become very conscious of that in the last couple of years. So I definitely exercise at least 5 times a week. I love walking, so I try
Yeah.
and walk. I've suddenly discovered in this day of social distancing, online walk videos, right? So these power walk videos, and I love walking. So that I, I keep trying these, whether it's intermittent fasting or eating well. I try and eat well. I love food. I like desserts, all of that. So I don't hold back. I indulge, but at least 5 days a week, I try and be good. I think the only thing that I'm not good about is sleep, and I think that's something that I need to work. I've also stopped. I enjoy clothes, I enjoy jewelry, and those things are not things I feel guilty about anymore. So when I go on Instagram,
Yeah.
all I do is look at jewelry stores, clothes stores, and Bollywood gossip, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's my well, I don't know if it's self love, but certainly sort
Yeah.
of, yeah, like downtime where I'm like, God, I don't have to be serious all the time,
Yeah,
right?
no, it's a good break. Yeah,
I think those three things, and walking and eating well, certainly.
that's great. I think that's good advice. And then, um, I guess for people who want to follow maybe like a similar entrepreneurial career path to yours, what was something you would recommend to them, or like the best thing you could recommend?
Entrepreneurship is such a fluke for it to work out. It's
Yeah.
just so tough to have a formula that works for everyone. And that's why the odds are so high, right? Because if the odds of success are just so high, the odds of failure are so high because there is just so much. It's the product you build, it's the marketing you do, it's the timing, then something like what we're going through happens. But if you really, it's not, you need to know why you're doing this. I think I would start with why is it important for you? What is it fulfilling? I don't think it's a cool and glamorous job. It's tough. If it works out, it's the best job in the world. Truly it is, because you really feel like you have so much of a canvas for self-expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way I look at it. But so much needs to go right for you to be an entrepreneur. I would really, the first and foremost starting point is to know that what you do has to really mean something for you. It is I don't want to speak in cliches of vision and purpose, but it's true. It almost, it should feel like, listen, I have to do this, otherwise I'll regret it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have to have that like passion driving.
Yeah, and I think for women, because there's so many self-employed women who are home-based entrepreneurs, I think that's possibly the largest segment of women entrepreneurs are essentially one or two people companies run from homes,
Mhm.
which is a very different model from the kind of entrepreneurship that I am doing through Harappa, right? I'm privileged to have the opportunities I do. For those, I feel like saying, people make it start, things start small, and the family and friends will make fun of you to say that, why are you doing this, what's the point of working so hard, and you might as well do, yeah, like chill, and you're hardly making any money. I don't listen to that. I always feel doing something is better than doing nothing. And
Yeah,
it's not a binary. It's not like you're doing nothing or you should be a billionaire, right? I think there
yeah,
is just so much in the middle for all of us that more power to anyone who wants to start anything.
yeah, I agree. And then my final question is, in what ways have you grown in the past year?
Oh my God. Like, I feel the last year has been just like, it has been a crazy, crazy, crazy year. We Harappa went live to the world in April 2019. So I think in 8 days is when
Wow.
we would have a year. So it's so new in that sense. The team has grown from 15 people to 80 people. We've got a first round of a big VC investment. We went to market. I have grown, whether it's around understanding education more, well, of course,
Mhm.
all the technical functional domains skills. I think how I've grown personally, uh, I think two things. I trust my instincts more,
Mhm.
because I feel like, when you look back after 6 months and say, hey, I took those decisions, were they good decisions or not good decisions? And I feel like on balance in this year, I must have made terrible decisions also, and have. But on balance, many more decisions were useful for the company. And so I think I've just got a little bit more confidence in my instincts as a founder. And I think the second thing is I've also developed a certain fearlessness, to say, hey, try this idea. Listen, I always say I'm not a surgeon, I'm not a
Yeah,
judge, and I'm not a police officer. I think those are three people I feel like in the really impact your life in, you know, don't take yourself that seriously through the work that you're doing. You'll have one crappy interview, you and Fuzia TV will be okay, right?
yeah,
So I think I've developed that little bit of fearlessness.
yeah,
Fine, launch a podcast. It doesn't work. Nobody in the world is going to be out at me, beating me up because I launched a crappy podcast, right? So I think that certainly is a way that I've changed.
yeah. I think it's good to have more perspective, I would say, than
Yeah,
grown.
and I think I would like to, my husband would laugh at this because I don't credit him for too much, but I think this I would credit him for. I think he's always said two things: that, listen, don't seek permission to do what you want to do. People
Mhm.
will come in line. Unless you're really destroying something for someone else, you don't need everybody's permission to do
Yeah,
something want to do. Most people don't have as strong an opinion you do about something, so you should go ahead and do it, right?
Mhm.
And second, nobody's looking at you, right? Like nobody
Yeah.
cares what you're doing. I think that's actually, if you realize that, it's actually quite liberating to say
Yeah.
that, listen, really, my neighbors don't care what I'm up to.
Yeah, I think everyone's absorbed in their own life, and so
Yeah, like your own universe is in your own head.
yeah, so if you make something out of it, then people might pay attention, but they're not going to.
Yeah, your failures, most people are not almost privy to your mini
Yeah,
failure on an everyday, every week
yeah.
basis.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that is good to realize. Those are all my questions, but if you wanted to add anything else.
No, I think the only thing to add is it's always wonderful to meet sort of young and inspired, young women like you, as well as to come across platforms like yours. And I mean, if there's anything I'd like to tell women, young women who are in your community is, listen, you can do it too, and you can always do more than you think. I think everybody can do more than they think they can, and a little bit more of doing that week by week, month by month, year by year, it starts showing up after a certain number of years. So don't stop doing something.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's all about growth and progress. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you so much. This has been a really great conversation, I think, for me as well. It's been so inspiring to hear about your journey and your life. So yeah, thank you so much for joining the show.